Hey there, creepy peeps. Welcome to my channel if you're new here, and welcome back if you're returning. Today we're gonna be doing something a little bit different. I think this was back when I was the last like unpopular horror opinions videos I did, where I did mine and then I read your guys's. There was a lot of comments about doing like my favorite final girls ranking, and I do a lot of like top 10, top 5 lists, whatever, on this channel. I thought I would do that just a little bit differently today and do one of these like tier ranking things. Obviously I couldn't do every single final girl ever because this video would be super duper long, so if you don't see your faves, it's either because I just didn't have enough time, or maybe I'm not as familiar with the final girl in question. There's like some, I know there's some of like your usual suspects of final girls that I've only seen the movie once, so I feel like I can't really like rank these characters if I don't really know. So, but if you end up enjoying this video and you want to see more, leave me some more like final girls, or maybe like villains, or whoever that you maybe want to see me rank in the future. Okay, so this is a tier list thing. I don't really know what these are called, but I've seen these a lot lately. People making videos ranking certain things. It's kind of just, I mean, as you can tell, the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, obviously F would be the lowest of the ranking. I think S is supposed to stand for like superb or something, but it's basically like God tier. About 20-ish, a little more than 20 final girls. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. This first one I'm going to do is actually going to be kind of like a remake versus original moment a little bit, because one of my patrons suggested doing Susie from Suspiria, if we count her as a final girl. I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, sure, why not? We can count her as a final girl, but I figured I would do the original and the remake, of course. So if I'm being completely honest, I feel like Susie doesn't do a whole lot in the original. I feel like she's pretty reactionary of a character. When it comes down to it, is she able to defeat the coven of her dance studio? Sorry, spoiler alert. Yes, but I feel like for the majority of the movie she's a pretty passive character. So I feel like we're gonna start off, I know, so I'm gonna have to make their images small to fit them in here. I'm gonna put her an E. In terms of like final girl, I just don't think she's that good of one. But 2018 Susie from the remake Suspiria, I think she's a little bit more, she's a little bit more intuitive and not as passive. Granted, both of them, you know, are under the influence of this coven, so you know, you have to give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. But yeah, I just feel like she becomes a little bit more aware of what's going on earlier on, and when she does, and she just like goes full on, like she's just like powerful witch goddess thing at the end. It's a beautiful thing, and you can argue that it's not her, but whatever. So I think that gives her a leg up on original Susie, so I'm gonna put her a D. Moving right along, of course, I just talked about this character in a video, so I had to include her here. Geraldine from Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, which if you haven't seen that, you need to watch it. It's just really good. Again, kind of like Susie, I feel like through a good portion of the movie she's pretty reactionary. Again, giving her the benefit of the doubt because, you know, demons have descended, and up until that point it's like, you know, you didn't know demons existed. When Breaker like passes on his legacy to her and is like, you have to, you know, be in charge of like the vial of blood or whatever now, and she has to face off against Billy Zane, she does a really good job. So I feel like at first I was thinking here with Susie, because again, like I said, I feel like through a good first half of the movie she's, you know, it's more about Breaker than her. Can I put people in the middle? Like, can I put her like right in between C and D? Because I feel good about that. I feel like that's where I would put her. Yeah, we're gonna do that. Okay. Next, I feel like I'm gonna make so many enemies doing this. Next, I'm gonna do Dana from Cabin in the Woods. I mean, this is a pretty typical, she's put into the very typical, stereotypical, I should say, final girl role, even though, spoiler alert, she's not a virgin. But you know, they're working with what they have. So, again, very reactionary. A lot of stuff just kind of happens to her, and it's the other characters that do a lot of the legwork for her. I feel like though that's kind of the stereotypical final girl way, though a lot of them, we'll get into this with a couple other final girls I have included on this list, but a lot of them are pretty reactionary. They're pretty passive until the very, very end. So I don't know, I feel like, yeah, she's not very proactive the first half of the movie. She does bring about the end of the world, which some people could think of as a bad thing, but I feel like that's kind of, I just feel like that's pretty badass. Like, I mean, I'm with it. I'm about that. I feel like I would put her on the same level as like Geraldine. Like right in between C and D here. Speaking of kind of passive and reactionary, is reactionary a word? I'm probably using that wrong, if it's even a word. Alice from Friday the 13th. She's the only Friday the 13th final girl I included on this just because there's so many GD movies in the franchise. And yeah, the first one is one of the Friday the 13th movies I've seen the most. I feel like she is like one of these prime examples of like, doesn't do a whole lot. Even when it's just down to her and Mrs. Voorhees, I feel like she still doesn't do a whole lot. Like, yeah, she chops Mrs. Voorhees' head off and then she just goes out into a boat. Like, yeah, I feel like she doesn't do a whole lot, and I'm probably gonna make a lot of enemies doing this, but honestly, I'd put Alice in F. F for Friday the 13th. Like, yeah, she's really just not my favorite final girl. Yeah. All right, so a little bit more modern final girl here. Tree from Happy Death Day. I mean, I've spoken on this so many times. I absolutely love Tree's character arc. She's not your typical final girl. She starts off as kind of like the bitchy sorority, kind of like slutty blonde kind of character, and gets this like beautiful arc that shows she's like not a stereotype. She's an actual human being. And she dies a whole bunch of times. I feel like you have to give credit where credit is due with that one. She dies a whole hell of a lot. I mean, that's a pretty tough thing to deal with, like having to die over and over and over and over and over again just to figure out who your killer is. I feel like I would put her firmly in the C camp. I feel like she's a pretty good final girl. Next one, patron suggested this one also. Sorry, all the images are really small until I move them up. Adelaide from Us. Or I guess I feel like I feel like it's a little hard to do this, although I did not include Red. I didn't know if I should have included Red in this. In terms of dealing with what's going on in the world in Us, I feel like Adelaide handles that pretty well. That also could kind of be, spoiler alert, that's Red. She's actually the doppelganger. You know, if you've seen the movie, you know the twist. If not, I just spoiled it for you. So it could be like, you know, like residual experience from that, which makes her such a tough character. But I feel like I'm gonna go ahead and like judge her final girl-ness on the majority of the movie before that big reveal, which is at the very, very end of the movie. So I feel like she handles herself pretty well. I honestly would put her in B, I think. I don't know if I should, well, I can't keep going outwards because I'm just gonna run out of room, so I'm gonna put her here. I would put her in B, I think. Sarah from The Descent. Again, I feel like kind of like Adelaide, not really like a final girl you would typically think of if somebody said like name off a bunch of final girls. She's been through a lot even before like the action of the movie starts. And again, I feel like we got to give credit where credit is due. Like, she genuinely does what she has to survive, including injuring Juno and leaving her down there to save herself. Which I'm gonna admit, a little bit petty given what Juno did to her. So there's obviously like a personal element to that, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of like the same with Adelaide here. I feel like I'm gonna put her on B. Speaking of badass characters, can't do a final girl ranking without Erin from Your Next. Y'all would have destroyed me in the comments if I had left her out. Yeah, this one's easy. She goes in God tier. Like, she goes in God tier. I should probably make some of these smaller, actually. Easy decision. She's the only final girl, really, that I know of or can think of off the top of my head that knows exactly what the fuck they're doing from start to finish in the movie. Sorry, I'm just gonna make some of these smaller so it's easier to tell what ranking people are on. She has literally all of the survival skills. She's amazing and she kicks so much ass. Yeah, she's calm, cool, and collected start to finish. So yeah, that one's a no-brainer. Erin is God tier. All right, you knew I was gonna include her on here. We have to talk about my girl, Sydney Prescott from Scream. This and one other one that get mentioned in my comments a lot, and I feel like I always have to bring her up a lot. We'll mention her later. I'm gonna do two for Sydney. First being Scream 1996, the first Scream movie. Pretty decent final girl. I feel like even though she admits in her own movie she doesn't watch horror movies, she knows enough to survive. She knows enough to get herself through this movie. And she's smart and resourceful. Like, when she first is talking to Ghostface, you know, she mentions that iconic line where she's talking about like the girls always run up the stairs when they should be running out the front door. And then when Ghostface attacks her, she does run for the front door even though it was locked. But, you know, she's true to her word. She did run for the front door first, and then she was forced to run upstairs because of the door. But then as soon as she locks herself in her room, she goes and contacts the authorities. She doesn't wait. She doesn't see Ghostface disappear and then go look for him like an idiot. She immediately contacts the police. So I feel like that's got to get her B-level status. Am I a little bit biased? Is it B for biased? Maybe a little bit, but she's smart. She knows enough to get herself through. Now, the end of her franchise thus far, Sydney in Scream 4. Obviously, we've had some character growth between 4 movies. I feel like mentally she's got it. She's kind of like worked through her trauma with, you know, the book that she has written at the beginning of the movie. But as soon as things start happening again, she doesn't wallow too much in all of this happening. She's pretty ready to kick ass again at this point. So I feel like Sydney finally moves into God tier status in Scream 4. I mean, she kills her own family member. Technically, yes, she did do that in Scream 3 also, but yeah, we love the growth. She's like, you know, whenever I see like lists of final girls, I feel like they're always talking about like Sydney and Lori and everybody in their first movie, which I'm like, I'm sorry, like I feel like they're not that great of a final girl in their first movies. And this is a prime example. Give her a couple movies, the end of the franchise, she's god level status now. Another one my patrons suggested I do. One, again, I wouldn't have thought of to initially include her in this. Maddie from Hush. I feel like, again, I'm gonna say this a lot, credit where credit is due. She's at a disadvantage compared to all of these other final girls that I've already mentioned and will mention because her character is deaf. The fact that she manages to hold her own through the whole movie with this disadvantage. The fact that she does that when she can't hear like the rest of the final girls can, I think deserves some credit. I'm gonna put her in A. I'm gonna put her in A. She clearly, it's like you never expect for something like that to happen, but for her being out in the middle of nowhere, she seems like she's pretty prepared for like the worst to happen. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Boom. Okay, next. Again, just one that's on every single final girl list ever. That is Sally Hardesty from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You guys aren't gonna like this, but I feel like this one's kind of a no-brainer. I think she goes with Alice in F. I know. I'm sorry, she really doesn't do anything. She really doesn't do anything. She's extremely, like Alice even does more than Sally does. And you could say, well, she's against a whole family, where Alice was just going against one person. But still, all she's doing is like screaming and running away the whole time. She doesn't even defeat Leatherface. So I'm sorry, she's got to go in F status. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules. I just make this ranking. Next, of course, another one that you knew I was gonna have to include is Ellen Ripley from Alien. Truly love this character. I feel like most of you agree too. We all just love Ripley. She's a very strong female character who isn't defined by any of the other male characters, and her relationship to those male characters in the movie, which is you wouldn't think is like that big of a deal, but it's kind of a big deal. And she obviously knows what the fuck she's doing. I mean, we're in this like universe of hers where like space travel is common and normal. So yeah, and to face off against the like quote unquote perfect predator and survive? What? Excuse me? All signs point to she should have been dead by the end of that movie. So I'm gonna put her in God tier. I'm gonna do that so Maddie doesn't cover her so much. I'm gonna put her in God tier. Another one that you see gracing every single final girl list ever, and that is Nancy from A Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm just gonna go with Nightmare on Elm Street 1 on this one. For a teenager, like literally a high schooler, she does really well, I do have to say. Especially against an adversary that attacks you in your dreams, which is extremely tough. I feel like we do have to acknowledge like all of these final girls' advantages and disadvantages. Like Erin has her upbringing, Ellen Ripley goes up against like literally the perfect predator. So we have to give credit where credit is due. I said I was gonna say that a lot. Nancy goes up against somebody who comes after you in your dreams, which the longer it takes you to defeat this adversary, the weaker you get because you're sleep deprived. So having to deal with that to defeat him is extremely difficult. And yeah, the fact that like nobody believes her either is really tough. I mean, that's a big theme in the movie, like the sins of the parents coming back to haunt the children. And of course, none of the parents believe her until it's too late. So I feel like, if I'm being completely honest, I'm gonna put her in between B and A, because like the beginning of her movie, but she does make a huge comeback, being sleep deprived and defeating Freddy. She doesn't really, but do they ever really? And setting all those traps and stuff. Next is Mia from Evil Dead remake. I love this remake. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. It's a really decent remake if you haven't watched it. Really, really good. She does lose a couple points because she isn't really the final girl in the beginning. She kind of plays all roles of like the first victim, like if we're judging it against the original Evil Dead. She kind of plays all of the roles really almost. She's like the first victim and then she becomes like the Ash Williams by the end. So, you know, we have to put her at a little bit of a disadvantage. Granted, she's also quitting hard drugs cold turkey, on top of being possessed by a deadite. But it's not her that saves her from that, it's her brother. So again, you know, she's got to lose a couple points for that. But when she comes back, like, girl rips her own hand off in order to defeat her deadite self. If it weren't for the end, I would probably have to put her down here, but because of that ending, I'm gonna move her up here in between D and C. I like I don't know why. I don't think that's allowed to put people like in between tiers. Max from Final Girls. Of course we have to talk about her. She has a huge advantage because her mom was a slasher icon within the universe of the movie. So she's got an advantage, although she is not the most knowledgeable character on horror movies within the universe of this movie. But she plays into the tropes really well, and she obviously knows it enough to work against the stereotypes and the tropes of the slasher genre in order to get out of the movie. So I would put her in C, I think. Not the best, but really good. Okay, the one probably a lot of you guys have been waiting for. Laurie Strode from Halloween. This is the second one where I'm going to talk about Laurie in the first Halloween versus the most recent one. So we'll start off with Laurie from the original Halloween, 1979. Really resourceful, holds her own very well, probably from like her babysitting gig. She knows to an extent how to deal with some pretty difficult situations, I would imagine, from watching people's kids. However, she does make a few mistakes. At least in my opinion. I think when she thinks she's knocked Michael out, she turns her back on him, leaving him just enough time to sit back up and come after her again. Not the smartest. I think instead of, I know she was traumatized, but instead of just sitting there after knocking Michael out, she should have gone and tried to contact the police some way. Go next door, go wherever. I know she sent the kids out to find somebody, but what if they don't find anybody, you know? You can't just rely on a couple of kids, you know? She had no idea they were gonna run into Loomis, so. I think for that, she has to be in C. For the first movie, okay? Before you guys freak the fuck out. I'm gonna go ahead and go with the most recent one because there's like way too many timelines in this franchise. And we're gonna talk about Laurie Strode in Halloween 2018. As this is meant as a direct sequel to the first one, right? Right? So, of course, like Sydney, Laurie's been through shit. And we have to take a look at how she's dealt with that. Mentally, not as good as Sydney. She has not dealt with it mentally as good as Sydney. Technically, she hasn't even been through as much as Sydney in this, because if I'm right, and this was a direct sequel to the first one, she's only been through this once, where Sydney has gone through this like 3 times now. However, in terms of like survival aspect, Lori did a way better job than Sydney in terms of growth. Like, obviously she's been using that 40 years within the movie time to like arm herself and train herself to survive this man that apparently can't be killed. And she doesn't become complacent, even though he's in he's in custody because he escaped from prison once, or the hospital once. And so it, like, logically she's like, it could happen again, and she ends up being right. So I mean, she has that badass like basement thing that she traps Michael in, which is really, really cool. And to get him down there requires like an actual like plan to trick him down there, which is also badass. So I feel like Lori moves from C to God tier in Halloween 2018. Okay, we got 2 more. This video is probably long enough anyway. Of course, I just mentioned this character also in my recent video, Jess from Black Christmas. I talked about in that video how she goes through a lot, dealing with the creepy caller, looking for her missing sorority sister and her man baby boyfriend. I feel like she does pretty well given all of that happening to her, but she's kind of like on the level of these final girls down here, where very passive, doesn't do a whole lot until the very end. And I mean, she can't really do anything about the caller because all he does is just call her until the very end. When she does think it's her boyfriend though, for that moment in time in the movie, she handles that pretty well. I feel like, as much as I love the character, it just ranking her against these other final girls, if I'm thinking about how she did in her own movie versus the killer, I'm gonna put her in between here, in between E and D. I know, it goes against, I feel like I'm have all this empty space here, so I'm gonna spread them out a little bit. Last but not least, again, my patrons mentioned this one, that I had to include her, and you know, I agree. And that is Grace from Ready or Not. Yeah, thrust into this very dangerous situation. You know, when you think you're playing hide and seek, you don't necessarily think that all the people trying to find you are going to kill you. She holds her own pretty damn well. I feel like she's a really good mix, like her character is a really good mixture of like passive and active. Like, she doesn't just let things happen to her for the whole movie. She is able to hold her own in a lot of moments, but she does have some moments where she's a little bit passive, you know. And we do have to talk about that ending. I'm sorry, I'm gonna spoil it, but she doesn't technically defeat anybody. The higher power, Satan, a demon, whatever you want to think it is, makes everybody spontaneously combust. So she doesn't actually really defeat anybody. She does her fair share of killing, don't get me wrong, but where it counts, like defeating the main members of the family, she doesn't do a whole lot. So I feel like because of that, I gotta put her in C. There. Are you guys surprised? Are you guys shocked that I put Sydney in B? At least Sydney in Scream 1. Are you guys totally shook? I feel like I'm very ready for the comments about who I put in F. That's not to say their characters, like, you know, like I think they're bad characters. It's just, if we're ranking them against these other people, I'm sorry. Some people have to be at the bottom, all right? So in the comments, let me know what you thought. Do you agree with some of my rankings? Do you agree with, how about this? Do you agree with my God tier? Erin, Sydney a la Scream 4, Ellen Ripley, and Lori a la Halloween 2018. Do we agree? What about Lori and Sydney in their first movies? Do you agree with my rankings here? Yeah, let me know how you would rank them if you want to. Like, if you want to just go ahead and put them in like numerical ranking or something. And like I said, if you want to see me do this again with other horror movie characters, give me some examples of who to rank, or if you want me to do like slashers, like villains, I'll happily do this. It's kind of a fun, maybe a little bit more casual video. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Subscribe if you're new here, or if you've been lurking, become a creepy peep today. I post videos 2 times a week, 2 new videos a week where I talk at your faces, and sometimes you guys listen. Hopefully you do. If you do, I really appreciate it. Thank you. I will speak to you guys very, very soon. Until then, stay strange. Bye.